So in this final chapter, I wanted to talk about how to find a surrogacy agency, whether you're a surrogate or an intended parent. Surprisingly, the agencies that get the best reviews from surrogates are also the ones that tend to get the best reviews from intended parents. Many agencies out there are founded on a true desire to help people in need and to take care of their surrogates, but unfortunately some are not. So in this chapter, I wanted to talk about some tips you should use when evaluating agencies. So first, how do you find a surrogacy agency? Unfortunately, there isn't a great directory of all surrogacy agencies around in the United States, but I have collected information of about 100 agencies that you can find on my website. So please use that as your starting point. But there are many smaller agencies out there that might be a good fit for you as well. But here are a few things that you should know when searching for surrogacy agencies. 1. Surrogacy agencies are not regulated, so this means that anyone can start a surrogacy agency. You, me, your brother, your sister, anybody. Most people find surrogacy agencies through Google, but keep in mind that agencies with more money have more money to advertise on Google, increasing the likelihood that you will notice them. And then agencies with more money to spend on advertising are also the same agencies that charge intended parents more for their fees. So your search should include various search engines because different search engines have different algorithms in their search functions, Facebook groups, and word of mouth. So I've talked about the value of Facebook groups before, and they are really important in the surrogacy world. This is where most of the activity happens. In this module, I have uploaded a list of surrogacy groups that you should join in order to find a surrogate, intended parent, or to evaluate agencies. So the first thing that you should do, even before looking for an agency, is to create a list of things that are important to you during your journey. Keeping a list of your priorities will help you with your agency search. And it's important to do this before you start looking at agencies because some of the things that agencies offer are actually really not important to you, or could not be important to you, were not important to me. But as soon as I saw them, I started thinking, oh, well, that would be nice. But the point is to stick with what is important to you. Do not get duped by these other services that are actually meaningless. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Some key questions that you should ask yourself. Is what is your budget for an agency? As I've talked about before, the average cost is about $23,000, but the minimum is $10,000. So you should be prepared to spend at least $10,000 for an agency. What do you need from an agency representative? Do you need external emotional support, or are you okay with the support you currently have in place, your family? Do you need ongoing counseling sessions? Do you need your hand held in each step? Which is perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to be honest with yourself. How much support do you need in the surrogacy journey? Because it's not fair, if you're the intended parent, to think that you're going to get it from the surrogate. You need to find your emotional support elsewhere. And you also need to think to yourself, well, what do you need from your surrogate other than carrying a baby? How important is it to you that she is close by? What level of communication do you want? What preferences will you ask of her? Are you going to ask her to be on an organic diet? How long are you willing to wait to match? Do you require your surrogate to have insurance coverage? So these are all important things that you should keep in mind before you even search for an agency. So as I mentioned before, the average agency fee is about $23,000, but that ranges from $10,000 to $50,000. Typically, the higher the agency fee, the more selective the agency is in picking a surrogate. And when I say more selective, there's more screening that happened before an intended parent gets to meet a surrogate. But this is not always the case, and I need to emphasize not. There are plenty of agencies that charge $25,000 that do not do an effective screening of their surrogates. But any fee over $20,000 should include a thorough medical and psychological evaluation, including medical review of her past records and a psychological evaluation of some sort. So there's going to be a lot of variation in what your agency would do in terms of a psychological evaluation before intended parents get to meet surrogates. Some don't do a thorough psychological evaluation on the surrogate until after they're matched, but then some do. And so in my mind, it's preferable to find agencies that do this psychological evaluation before intended parents get to meet surrogates. So the most rigorous type of psychological evaluation is an at-home assessment. So this is an example where a professional goes to the surrogate's home and evaluates the home life to make sure that she has enough support to help her through a surrogacy journey. So if you're an intended parent, you should ask them what type of psychological evaluations were done to determine if that is going to be enough for you. So did they do enough screening for your preferences? The second thing that you should do if you're an intended parent is ask about refund policies. So typically the agency fee is due at certain points of the journey in 3 parts. You would pay a portion of the fee at signing with the agency, at matching with the surrogate, and at delivery of the baby. But sometimes once an intended parent is matched with the surrogate, things don't work out for one reason or another. Whether it's a failed embryo transfer or the surrogate didn't clear medical clearance at the clinic, there are many reasons why matches don't work out. So most agencies will not demand another rematching fee, but some will. And I would advise picking an agency that allows you to rematch at least twice before paying additional fees. The third thing that you should do, whether or not you're a surrogate or an intended parent, is to ask for references. So talking to previous intended parents and surrogates will give you more or less confidence about the agency that you're currently evaluating. References may not outrightly tell you to run away, but you can pick up from the tone of your conversation that there might be some things that you should look out for. And so you can get a lot of information just by talking to previous clients and surrogates. Another thing that you should do, whether or not you're an intended parent or surrogate, is ask for example profiles of surrogates and intended parents. My favorite agencies were the ones that had a search engine where I could look and browse through all the surrogates that they had available and ones that they recently matched. And this just gave me an idea of the culture and the screening that they did. So if you have a search engine, some of the profiles should cover the age of the surrogate, whether or not they have a job, and a picture. And generally, the more information that you have about prior surrogates or intended parents, the better. So more information about their interests, where they like to shop, just general get to know you questions. And this is especially important if the agency is asking you to wait months. So you don't want to wait months and months just to get a surrogate that you're not happy with or to be matched with intended parents that you're not happy with. So it's very important to understand what your potential match might look like on paper. My fifth tip when evaluating agencies is to not be afraid of asking questions. You are the one in charge. Whether or not you're a surrogate or intended parent, you have the power. But there are a few reasons why you might feel intimidated when you're speaking to an agency. If you're an intended parent especially, you have been through an emotionally or physically draining experience so far. This is what led you to surrogacy to begin with. So you might feel that you don't have that many options, but I'm here to tell you that you do. So keep in mind that there are more than 100 Better Business Bureau agencies, which means that there are way more than 100 surrogacy agencies in the USA. So what I mean is that the agencies that you find on the BBB website is just a smaller sample of the true number of agencies that there are in the United States. There's a lot of reasons why agencies wouldn't be on the BBB website. It costs money to join, and it's pretty significant. So just because your agency isn't on that website or is not accredited by the BBB doesn't mean that you should cross them off your list. And another reason why you shouldn't feel intimidated is that surrogacy is increasing. By 2030, it is estimated that about 10% of embryo transfers will involve a surrogate. So this is something that is really happening, and is happening quickly and is growing in the United States. The sixth thing that I would keep in mind when evaluating agencies is to not fall for meaningless services. So these are all quotes that I took from a very famous surrogacy agency in the United States. And I just kind of wanted to talk to you about whether or not these are meaningful. So for example, this agency says that for our $40,000 fee, we will help you with a legal strategy for specific state or court requirements and marital and embryo status. Let me tell you that your lawyer and your clinic will handle this for you. There's no reason to pay a third person for this. Medical alignment on IVF's clinic surrogate protocol and requirements. Your clinic does that for you. A personalized match meeting led by this agency's professionals. What qualifications do you need to be a matchmaker? Seriously. And this agency lastly says, we coordinate a mock cycle. No, you actually don't. This is done by your clinic. So basically my point here is that agencies are constantly advertising and they're trying to market themselves, but a lot of that information is meaningless services. So you really have to ask yourself, what is this agency providing that I will not get from my clinic or my lawyer? And then once you answer those questions, you'll see that the list is actually not that long. The 7th tip that I have is to be aware of agencies that treat their surrogates as products and not as human beings. Here is an example that really angers me. We have a basic package and we have a preferred package that this agency offers. And if you want to sign up for the basic, it's $35,000. But if you want the preferred, then you have to pay $45,000 for a surrogate. And then they tell you that under the basic plan, your surrogate has a standard health criteria, but underneath the preferred plan, they have an enhanced health criteria. So let's talk about what that means. So in here, I have itemized what they mean by basic versus preferred surrogate. And you can see here that in general, their basic surrogates have had more deliveries. They can have a BMI to be a little bit larger, and they are allowed to have more C-sections. This is not acceptable. You should not treat human beings as products and label them as basic versus preferred. This is outrageous. So I would definitely stay clear of any agency that does this to a human being. The one thing that you want is that you want a surrogate that is healthy, and you want one that is up to the ASRM guidelines. And after that, that's all that anybody can say on whether or not this woman will be a good surrogate. To try to qualify them and to label and to categorize them based on these meaningless metrics is disgusting. So I would definitely stay clear of any agency that treats their surrogates this way. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is that it's okay to go with your gut when it comes to evaluating agencies and the surrogates that they tend to have or the intended parents that they tend to have. But be aware of your own biases and judgments that really don't matter. So the more and more you get ingrained in examining agencies, more and more things will come up that weren't important to you, but that suddenly become important to you. And it's okay that your preferences change, and they should as you learn more. But be aware that you might be having some biases or you might be having some judgments that really should not matter when it comes to your surrogate, intended parent, or agency. So really keep that in mind, because the more and more and more you have on your list, the more money you're going to spend, and it's not valuable. Your first priority should always be going with an agency that has both the intended parents and surrogate's best interests at heart. Whether or not you're an intended parent or surrogate, you should want an agency that has the best interests of both parties at heart. They will all say this. All agencies are going to say this, but you need to use your own gut feeling to see which ones really mean it or which ones are really a good fit for you. And in addition to your gut, you should be going on Facebook groups, asking people about their experience with this agency. You should also be seeing if you find any reviews online or anything that you can get your hands on. Any piece of information is going to be very valuable for you when it comes to evaluating and finding the agency for you.